Hi friends, Chris Van Dusen here. Today we're going to do another drawing and we are going to try to draw this guy. This is Mr. Paine, the mean circus boss from the Circus Ship. So let's get started. Have our paper and pencil. And we're going to start by doing a shape that looks kind of like a, well, kind of a bulgy bucket. Kind of looks like this. And we're going to draw lightly at first, just so we get the shapes down. This is going to be the shape of Mr. Paine's head. Now we're going to go up here and we're going to figure out where his nose starts. And I'm going to go right about midway along the top, and I'm going to do a shape that looks kind of like a banana. I'm going to do a shape that looks like this. Right? That's his nose. He has kind of this long, sort of pointed nose. Now let's show his nostril by doing a little line there, and then on the back of the nostril put a little, almost like a little letter C that looks like the side of his nose. So that's going to be the side of his nose right there. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to come over to the side and we're going to put his little ears on. And he has these little comic ears kind of like Mr. McGee's, look kind of like this. And we'll just show a little bit coming off that side. So those are going to be his ears. And if you want, you can put those little marks in his ears. That's the way I usually indicate the crease in his ears. Now let's come up here and we'll do his hat. His hat is also kind of shaped like, kind of like a, I don't know, kind of like those balloons, I guess. And we're going to start down here. We're going to actually come off the top of his ear. We're going to come out a little bit like this. We're going to come around like this, back around, and join back in there. So that's basically going to be the brim of his hat. Now we'll show the thickness of his brim by just doing a little line below that follows right along there, something like that. Now let's finish up his hat. See this line that comes up here? We're going to continue that line like this. We'll bring it up to about there. We'll do a curved top, sort of like this. And then we'll come up on this side, again, sort of following this line up here, until it joins together, something like that. And draw lightly at first like we've always been doing, because you can come back in and darken this up. Let's add his hat band by following the curve of this line with another line that goes right across the hat like that. That's his hat band. So that's basically his hat, his top hat. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to draw Mr. Paine's big mustache. He has a huge mustache and it kind of curves down like this. So let's start right at the edge of that nostril. You see right there? And we're going to do a line that curves down here and comes up here, just like this. Watch this. It's going to come down quite a ways and then it's going to sharply curve back up and it's going to join back in about there. Stop about there because we'll draw his hair coming in from the side here. This is going to be his sideburn working into his mustache. All right? Now, if we go across here, we're going to find out where the other side of the mustache comes out, and it's going to be about halfway down his nose. We're going to do another line that goes like this, and then curves, oops, I didn't get it quite low enough, curves back up like this, and joins back into his side of his head there. Again, we can take our eraser if we make mistakes, and just correct those things, so no big deal. So that's going to be the top of his mustache, and then we will come and do the bottom of his mustache, right next to this line, right up here, just close to the side of his head. We will do another line that follows down along the side of his head, comes down to about there. And then it's going to curve back up to about there, come back across. We're going to come back down here. It's like a big roller coaster line, and we're going to come all the way back out here, maybe even come out a little bit farther than his head. So his head sort of tucks up underneath there. So that's going to be the shape of Mr. Paine's mustache. Now, he has this hair that's kind of combed forward, so we're going to do these little lines that look like almost like a little sawtooth that kind of come in this way from the side of his head. And this could be the back of his hair. You can make it anything you really want. So, in fact, I'm going to erase some of those lines in there so it looks like it's just his hair. And I'll do the same thing over here, not showing quite as much because we don't see as much on this side of his head, just the way it's positioned. All right, you have that? Good. Now we're going to draw his eyes, and her eyes are just really small circles, and they're fairly close together, so we're going to draw just the bottom half of the eyes. So we're going to do like this, like a little circle right there, and then maybe a little circle right in there, right? And there's his nose, can come up a little bit there if you want. Now let's have him looking off to the side here. Maybe he's looking off this way, so we'll draw some eyes like that. And then to make him look mean, we'll do the eyes slanted down. So I'm going to draw like a small S shape that looks something like this. And it curves back up like that. And I'm going to do the reverse over on this eye. I'm going to start here, curve down, come up like that, and curve up like that. And they're fairly bushy eyebrows on Mr. Paine, so I'm going to make them a little bit thicker than my normal eyebrows. And kind of with the hair, show some of the hairs. And you can do this whatever way you want. It doesn't have to be exactly like this. Whatever you want to do for his eyebrows. Be something like that. We will also add some bags to his eyes because he's kind of an older guy. So we'll put some bags under his eyes, maybe a couple. And maybe a couple over here. And then some of those crow's feet wrinkles like we put on Eugenia a while back. They kind of tuck into the side of his eyes like that. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add his mouth. And he's always scowling. He's just always a mad guy. So what we're going to do is we're going to find this curve here. And we're going to find a point like about halfway down this curve. And we're going to follow it down. But instead of curving around this way, we're going to come straight down to about there. Right? Then we're going to curve it around. And we're going to curve around to the bottom of his mouth. It's going to be like that. And then we'll curve it around and join it right back up underneath, right to the side of the mustache, like that. So that's what his mouth will look like. Then to show his bottom lip, we'll find another spot right here, and we'll just sort of do another line very similar to that one we just did, but just a little bit space in between so you see his lip. So that's going to be his bottom lip. Now, before we've drawn teeth, we've just drawn a line going across with some lines this way, but Mr. Paine has really bad teeth. So we're going to do his teeth individually, and we're going to put some gaps in between them. Some are different size, whatever you want to do, just to make his teeth look kind of not very good in his mouth. A dentist wouldn't like to see that. That's all right. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to add his chin. And his chin is actually going to come below this line. So we're going to come here and we're going to add like a little wrinkle line. So we have 1, 2, 3 lines, very similar. But when we get to about here, we're all of a sudden going to curve it down so it actually comes below that line, out a little bit like this, back up, and like that. So that's going to be his chin. And we can erase that line if we want. Right? Now already I've seen that I've made this a little bit too high, so I'm going to bring this line down a little bit because it should be something like that. Should be a little bit lower like that, right? And I can erase that line too. It doesn't have to be perfect, we're just having fun here, so if you have to make adjustments as you go, that's totally fine. I'm always making adjustments when I'm doing my drawings, so. Now, let's see. Let's do some shadows. Let's do a shadow under his nose. We can start darkening some of these lines now because I feel like I've got the lines in pretty good shape. So I'm going to darken this nose a little bit. I wish my pencil was a little bit sharper. And then I'm going to add some little lines underneath his nose. Those are kind of like the shadow from his nose coming down. Oops. See, and I went up into his nose, so I'll just erase that. And then if you want, you could just draw some little lines that curve according to the mustache. And these are sort of the hairs of his mustache that works into his sideburns like that. So they look something like that. And you can do the same thing on the other side, only if you want to. You don't have to do this, but this helps define the mustache a little bit. And we're going to curve it around like that. So it's like that. Then we'll fill in this mouth because that's all white now, but it should be all black because he's got his mouth wide open and he's, of course, yelling at somebody like he always does. He's not such a nice guy. In fact, this is the first time I've added a villain to one of my books, and I really had fun with this character. He didn't exist in real life. There's no such person as Mr. Paine, but I just thought, he's such a grumpy guy. He's really fun to draw. He's always yelling, and he's mean, and he's greedy, so I like always drawing him with his mouth open and just like yelling at somebody. Then let's take a little zigzag line that indicates and shadows in his lower lip there, so like that. We'll add a little shadow below that. We'll add a little shadow to the bottom of his chin. And let's add a little shadow to his nose. I'm going to make his nose kind of curve. I'm going to make the shadow a little bit curvy like that. That'll show the form of the nose a little better. Same thing with his cheeks. I'll just do a little cross-hatching in his cheeks. Remember we talked about cross-hatching before? So it just adds a little bit of shadow there. I'm going to put a little shadow underneath the brim of his hat. Actually, I'm going to darken the brim of his hat a little bit like that. And then I'll put a little shadow underneath because it'll look like it's hanging over his head, the front of his face a little bit. And then I'll do another cross-hatching underneath, so it looks like there's shadows underneath the hat. Doesn't have to be perfect. We're just going to darken in really quickly. And we'll just do some lines like this to sort of define the contour of his hat too. So now the last thing we have to do, let's darken in some of these lines. The last thing we have to do is we have to add his collar and his shirt. So let's do that now, okay? Now actually we're going to bring a line right from here, right where this starts to curve. We're going to bring a line that comes up like this and then it goes down like that, because he has this collar that stands up on his neck. And then right about here, we're going to put another line out here that goes like this. And that, again, is his collar. If you want, you can erase that line there, because that shouldn't be there. And then right below his chin, we'll just do this sort of loose circle. This is the knot of his ascot, his little scarf that he wears. And then we'll do these two little, I don't know, fish-shaped pieces that come down, look like the ends of his scarf knot. We'll darken that bottom of his chin, and then we'll add these. We'll add the rest of the scarf coming in here, and we can just shade that in lightly if you want. This doesn't have to be perfect. It's something like that. All right. I come back and I keep seeing things I want to darken a little bit, and you can kind of go through and adjust things as you go. I always do that when I'm drawing my pictures from my book. I'm always constantly changing them and adding little dimensions and shading and stuff like that. Now we'll come back up here, right about halfway up the side of his head here. We're going to put a little line that goes like this, just out a little bit, and then it curves down like this. And this is going to be his collar of his jacket. And then we're going to come down here and just indicate a lapel, which is going to look like zig, 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 something like that. Same thing, we'll start about here, come down, boot, boot, boot. Doesn't have to be perfect. And then right here, where this all joins together, we'll just bring the outside of the inside of the lapel right in something like that. Last thing we'll do is add a little indication of his shoulder, and that is basically Mr. Paine. Look, you guys did a great job. In fact, I bet some of you guys did a better job than I did. Sometimes I do these things, and I never know exactly how they're going to turn out, but that's kind of the fun part of it too, just sort of seeing how your drawing evolves over time. All right, that's Mr. Paine. If you guys had fun, join me again, and we'll do another drawing tomorrow, all right? Until then, have fun, stay well, and we'll see you soon. Bye.